Hey everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is your Right Angle Lightning Round, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com, but available now for general release. And what I do is, when it's my turn every third week to host this special segment, I collect stories that are maybe a little too small, maybe a little too weird, maybe just too fun to do a serious segment on, and then I kind of hurl these headlines at Bill and Scott and get their gut reactions. It's a lot of fun for everybody except for Scott, which
A
is
lot of hurling
why I
going
love
on
it.
here.
Yeah, lots of hurling. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. This one sounds like bad news. I maintain that it's good news, and I want to get Bill's take on this. Elon Musk says Hyperloop. This is their latest test, just late last week, I think. He had a top speed of 288 miles per hour, which is well short of the top speed they want to hit someday, and then exploded. Now, it didn't actually explode. It turns out, pieces were flying off the thing at the end of the test, and nobody was hurt. But I maintain that this test is actually good news. Can we get your take on that? And maybe tell us a little bit about what Hyperloop is for viewers who don't know.
Sure, Hyperloop is another Elon Musk project, and it's basically trying to get past the problem we have with sonic booms. When I was growing up, I thought we'd be supersonic flight from Los Angeles to New York, be there in an hour, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But sonic booms can actually be pretty disruptive, and when the shuttle would land, it would hit the apartment. Felt like somebody backed a truck into it. Just feel the whole thing shake. So the problem is, how do you go faster than the speed of sound in the air? And you really can't. But if you do it in a tube, the speed of sound changes with the density of the air. So the speed of sound is 720 miles an hour or something at sea level. 50, 60, 70,000 feet, it's 600 and it drops. So if you take a tube and you evacuate the air in front of it, create a partial vacuum in front of this capsule, and if you pump air into the back of it, you don't even really need a motor, really. You just shoot it down the tube.
Like a pea shooter almost, but with a
Precisely
vacuum
correct.
in front of the little spit
Precisely.
wad.
You're not just pushing like you are on a pea shooter, you're pulling as well. And that speed that you mentioned, if it is not higher than the top speed of the bullet trains in France and Japan, then it's certainly very close to them. And these guys are going to go well past. Look, if you can't go past 550 miles an hour, which is the speed of a commercial jet, there's no reason to do this.
Bingo.
So anyway, so the program is ambitious and very cool. Every time there's a failure, especially a catastrophic failure, what you have something that was designed with a flaw, and you didn't know what the flaw was because otherwise you wouldn't have designed it that way. But all of these design flaws are built into any vehicle or aircraft or whatever the case may be. And the sooner you find out where these gremlins are, the sooner you can get to operational safety. So the problem with a successful test is that if there's something hiding in there, you didn't find it. And every time you have a failure, you, by backtracking through the wreckage, are able to determine what went wrong, and that will be corrected downstream. You may find new problems, and sometimes, rarely, the changes you make to correct the old problem will create new problems. That's almost never the case. So really, the best way to think about it is there are a certain amount of moles that need to be whacked. And the sooner you whack them, the sooner you can start to use this device. But there is no getting around this. SpaceX is, if you go back and look at SpaceX from 10 years ago, everything they launched exploded. And Elon Musk had the sense, had the vision to understand that this is how we get to safe vehicles, is by finding out where we went wrong, having the world show us in spectacular fashion, and then trying to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again.
Steve, can I add that I think the best thing about this test, my understanding was that the brakes worked. And as a future passenger, that's really all I want to know getting in. Are the
Am
brakes
I
going to
going
work?
to come to a complete stop at my final destination? Yeah, that is a big hope. And my first thought when I heard about Hyperloop was, number one, that's really cool. Number two, you're just going to be able to have one passenger-bearing capsule in this loop at a time, but it turns out no. There's this really cool video you can find on YouTube of it's a CGI demo of how it's supposed to work, and you can inject these passenger-bearing capsules into this thing like Pez coming out of a dispenser, maybe going into the dispenser. It is just the coolest thing in the world. You've got to check this out. And
Parenthetically,
Yeah.
there's already a very similar system at work in the U.S., and it's been in place for a long time, and it's our oil pipeline network. When they want to switch from like a different grade of gasoline to another grade of gasoline, they basically take something they call the pig, they put it in the pipeline, and then everything behind that plug, that moving plug, is of a different chemical composition, and they've got all different kinds of fuels moving down these same pipelines all the time.
It's amazing. It's so cool. All right, Scott, let's move on to you. It's our unexpectedly headline of the week, if this were Instant Pundit. Wealthy New Yorkers are ditching city's high taxes for Miami. And yeah, this is Trump's new tax law at work. What do you say?
I don't know. Laying around on the beach in the sunshine or shoveling snow. Which one sounds better to you? But there's all kinds. I mean, that's why people used to leave New York City and go to Florida. And that exodus of annual or semi-annual snowbirds used to happen on a regular basis. And then it was common for people in New York and New Jersey, especially, to retire to Florida, where they had vacationed most of their lives. But now the Trump administration has provided new impetus for this to happen by reducing the amount of state and local taxes that you can deduct on your federal tax return. And then all of a sudden, the financial viability of living in places like New York and New Jersey becomes more of a challenge. And frankly, I think this is one of the most brilliant things that the Trump administration has done so far, because by doing that, the states were using the federal government deductibility as cover to run irresponsibly large and profligate state governments. And now they're kind of forced to justify that, because it's one thing to say this is how much your tax is and it's deductible. It's another thing to say it's all coming out of your wallet, brother. And so you say, arrivederci, New York, and hello, Miami.
Yeah, indeed. And no, I totally lost my train of thought, so I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm just going to move right along to the next
You
headline.
lost your Hyperloop of thought.
I did. I read about these things, and I think about the infrastructure building and all the awesomeness that's coming our way, and I hope I live long enough to see some of this come to fruition. It's just amazing. Bill, Republican group apologizing for mocking four congresswomen as the Jihad squad. I maintain that apologizing was a huge mistake. What about you?
Absolutely a huge mistake. Absolutely. When you say something controversial and you upset half of the country, if you then go out and apologize for it, you then upset the other half of the country, and nobody likes you anymore after that. I've always been not only willing, but I've enthusiastically apologize on those occasions when I'm wrong. Speaking hypothetically, of course, I'm sure the day will come. But seriously, if I make a mistake on something, then it's not a question of having to twist my arm into an apology. If I've made a mistake on something, then my personal credibility depends on my apology. But that's not what we're talking about here. When you apologize for something that's true, you simply put another nail in the coffin of this decline of free speech and free thinking. And I don't know if I've told this story before, but I guess it's been long enough now. I've been in real trouble twice in my career, and the first time was when I introduced Ted Cruz at a Dallas church filled with 4,000 people, and I said, if you see people coming in from California, from I-10 from the west with California plates, just open fire and ask questions later. Rocket launchers, pistols, grenades, whatever you happen to have, they're going to ruin your state. Well, some people took this seriously, and the management at our former home called me and demanded that I apologize for it.
I remember that.
And I wouldn't. I would not do it. I said, if I apologize for this, it is an admission that somebody could have taken this seriously. It's an admission that somebody could have seriously taken this hyperbole seriously. It's like me saying, wow, my suitcase weighs a ton. Well, your suitcase doesn't weigh a ton. That's 2,000 pounds. I saw you lift it. Apologize. No, if that goes past you, then no. So I refused to do it. And I was told, well, if it happens again, then that'll be that. But I remember thinking, I'd expected better from people who are presumably in the challenging the pop culture, social proof jihad that's basically crippling free speech in this country. So look, the only thing that I measure whether you should apologize for or not is whether or not what you said is true. If it was true, stick to your guns. And even if you're standing alone on that island, you're standing in the company of righteousness, if the righteous people may not be there with you, but you alone have a satisfaction of knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. My personal motto for years has been never apologize for the good stuff, and telling the truth in politics, that's some of the best stuff right
It's the
there.
only stuff.
Take a stand. Scott, let's finish up with you, and forgive the poor grammar here. This comes from Cory Booker, talking to one of those late-night talk show hosts that I can't actually tell apart. Booker said, my testosterone sometimes makes... I have to start this over again. It's so poorly phrased that I'm not quite sure how to say this correctly. My testosterone sometimes makes me want to feel like punching Trump, which would be bad for this elderly, out-of-shape man that he is, if I did that, a physically weak specimen. So if I can paraphrase, that's an exact quote. What Cory Booker is saying is that his testosterone, his Hulk-level testosterone, makes him want to punch Donald Trump, but that would be bad because Donald Trump is a physically weak, elderly man. A couple of things on this. Number one, should Cory Booker ever attempt to trash talk like Donald Trump? And the second part of my question is, what kind of a man actually talks about his testosterone in public?
I think Cory Booker should release a rap music album under the pseudonym Low T. I think that's, there's just... It's one thing to issue fighting words, and he should be generally brought up on charges before his colleagues in the Senate, because that was certainly a breach of decorum of this this very gentle and politically savvy body. But it's another thing to try to make yourself look tough while sort of being passive aggressive in the process. I mean, he's not challenging Trump to a duel. He's basically saying, well, I certainly would challenge him to a duel, but I don't want to embarrass the man. And that just makes him look like a ninny. It just it makes him look ridiculous. If he really, he's not even saying, as a man, when President Trump says things, I want to punch him in the face. He's not even saying that, but my testosterone makes me feel like there's another force at operation inside him, a chemistry that drives him over which he has no control. And if he had his choice, he would certainly have more estrogen, so he didn't feel like he should punch the president of the United States. But because he has testosterone, therefore, that's making him feel that way. I mean, where's Spartacus when you need him? Where's a guy who's willing to stand up and say, I am Spartacus, and actually go and challenge the president and get in his face? It just makes him look like the kind of pathetic ninny that everybody thought he was, and certainly can't help his presidential prospects.
Mark
sorry,
Twain,
Bill, go ahead.
So I just got to get this in. Mark Twain talked once about how he and another guy got into a altercation in public, and it was going to turn into a fight, and Mark Twain said, let me at him. You two guys can hold him, and two of you can hold me.
Cory Booker, let's face it, he's Anthony Michael Hall in The Breakfast Club. Oh, I beat up lots of guys in Canada, Niagara Falls region. You wouldn't know them.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Last story. Oh, I really like this story, so I saved it for me. This comes from the College Fix, and this is just, I think this is the best thing, long-term anyway, that I've seen in a long time. Young Democratic Socialists, this is an actual outfit, Young Democratic Socialists, all, capitals, trained to recruit without using the word socialism. I know a lot of us have been getting pretty worried over the last year or two with, all the kids, they're loving the socialism. The Democrats are promising a socialism. They're just going to destroy the country. They want the Venezuela. Except that according to Young Democratic Socialist organizer Anna Bonomo, she recently told her organization in a training video that the College Fix obtained, we want to abolish capitalism, nothing less than that, but they need to not use the word socialism and instead try and connect over shared struggles and shared interests in this training video. And I got to tell you, an organization like this has its ear pretty dang close to the ground of what young college kids are thinking these days. And apparently young college kids these days need to be tricked into supporting socialism. And that, I maintain, is pretty damn good news, because anybody with a lick of sense needs to be tricked into supporting socialism. And that is your Right Angle Lightning Round, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. If you like what you see, you could become one of the actual sponsors of this content. Click on over to BillWhittle.com. Join today. We would love to have you on board. For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.